In Bharat Muni, it is impossible. Shringarat bhavedhasyo raudrat cha karuno rasaha virat adbudotpattihi vibhatat cha bhayanakaha. That's all. Four rasas give, four kinds of acts give rise to four other kinds of activities, which are entirely human, which are full of contradiction. If you know that Urvashi is not going to leave you, you are in heaven, you are Indra, then there is no fear. And that is the state of heaven. It is not the state of Natak. You know what Tolstoy said? He said, what is heaven? Where you, if you are young, if you don't have diseases in your body, if you don't have to go to work, if you don't have to earn money, if you have plenty of things, there is heaven on earth. What else is heaven? That's heaven. So, every kind of heaven, in every culture, is a place of enjoyment where there is no contradiction. Whether it is Islamic heaven, Hindu heaven, Christian heaven, no contradiction. But without contradiction, there can be no natya. So, it is precisely in the heaven that there is a demand made for natak. Indra says that I want something which can entertain me, which talks about sukh and dukkha. In other words, devatas are not capable of creating art, just as men only are not capable of creating art. Natshas will tell us in a minute. So he says that I want to see this plaything, and Brahma then gave him. Then there is also another very important thing. Indra said that I want this Kridaniyakam. Literally speaking, Kridaniyakam means a toy, khilona. But then you know, khilona, even in Hindi, is a metaphor. Anything which gives us enjoyment, Kridaniyakam. And this Kridaniyakam is for an elevated kind of a pleasure, not the very ordinary, uninspiring kind. But it is not just entertainment that we want. It is not just that we want to be happy or diverted. Because if we become so self-centered that we want to take our mind away from daily cares and ordinary activity, then we are contributing nothing else to society at large. So they said, there is another reason Brahma said that I am going to give you nat. He says, na veda vyavharoyam sambhavya shudra jatishu tasmat srijaparam vedam panchamam sarva varanikam. And he said that look, high philosophical discourse, high level philosophy, and when they say Veda Vyavahar, which means the Vedic ritual of yajna and all that, then what they mean by this is that something which is of the most exclusive level. He says that's not available to people at large, because people are not educated enough, or the whole world is not just one kind. So you don't have just an MBA course in the world today. Every university is not topmost university. So he says, because only some people have access to the esoteric knowledge, to the highest level of knowledge, the Vedic knowledge, and only some people can spend such a lot of time. Therefore, we want that the crux of that knowledge should come to everybody. It should come to all the classes, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. The working class, the business class, the warrior class, the intellectual class. Because the crux and the summum bonum of it is of common utility. That knowledge is not meant for just a few people. So, because that knowledge can travel, so I am going to make a fifth Veda. I am going to make some kind of a vehicle which is going to give the message of the Vedas to everybody. And that would be called the fifth Veda. Now, this is part of the terminology of ancient times. When something is valuable, as the Vedic Samhita, and then you say that this is as good as the Vedas, then that thing which you present as good as the Vedas or containing the message of the Vedas also becomes useful. Here, there is something very important that you should understand, and which creates a lot of confusion, because again we have this ideological difference between Western scholarship and Indian tradition. In Indian tradition, Veda is not just the 4 Vedas, Rik, Yajur, Sam and Atharva. It is not a collection of these 4 samhitas, mantras. Veda means a knowledge. And this knowledge is supposed to go down to the world through texts that are attached to it. So the Brahmanas are attached to it, which are largely the ritual part of it. The Aranyakas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, the philosophies, they are all later on attached to the Veda. And so Veda here is a tradition. Veda Mata. It is a tradition of knowledge which is also practical, which is also institutional, and which is also a continuum. It is not just the 4 Vedas or Samhitas collected and given at a particular time. So the earliest text, they use the concept of the 5th Veda. When they want to say that through this other art form, or through this Ayurveda, or through this other activity, you can possibly get the Vedic knowledge, then, you see, then you get the knowledge of the Vedas through that art form also. So here it is very clearly laid out that Natya, is supposed to bring the essential values, the Vedic values, to the people. Because everybody is not going to learn it through the discipline, through the activity of that kind. And so, theatre, art, drama is not just for entertainment. It is for elevation. In other words, there has to be a higher moral purpose in it. Art without a moral purpose, art without a dharmic purpose, dharmic in the sense of making you follow your duties, making you follow your higher ambitions, making you follow your responsibility to your other human beings. Unless art is part of that, it does not qualify to be At least it does not qualify to be Natya, because we are talking here in the context of Natya Veda. It will not be Natya Veda, and hence it cannot be used by Natya Shastra either. So, the text is very clear that it is entertainment, but it is an entertainment which talks in the deepest sense of human responsibility. It is a Kridaniyak, but it is also the fifth Veda. And as I said, that you have to understand the fifth Veda in the sense that it brings the most essential knowledge to us. Now, the term Veda, if it is knowledge ever renewing, then by definition it cannot be restricted to a class or to a people or to a region. Therefore, Natya Veda has to go everywhere. Natya Shastra has to go everywhere. Natya has to go everywhere. And it has to go in the whole of India. The whole of Karma Bhumi or Bharatvarsh, as it will be defined later in the next chapter. So, to summarize this whole first chapter, the essential part is, first of all, theater can only come out of a situation, a human situation of happiness and sorrow, not out of a heavenly situation. The very story that Indra in heaven asks for Natya, thank you so much. The very story that Indra is asking is meaningful, as I said, because in heaven you have all happiness. You will not get the happiness of Natya. And when we come to the sixth chapter, then we will enter deeply into the question that you cannot get rasa in heaven. There are all kinds of wonderful things in heaven, as they are described in Puranas and various traditions, but there is no art in heaven. The artist and the performance can only be on earth. You know, there is in the Vaishnava tradition, particularly in the Krishna Leela tradition, a very strong emphasis that when Krishna dances and he is doing Ras or Maharas, then the Devatas are coming to watch. Why? Because there is no artistic pleasure in heaven. So you have come to see something which you cannot get in heaven. If you look at the ideological depth of it, then on the level of Krishna being the Purushottam Leela Purush, being Brahma, you cannot find Brahma in heaven, because Brahma is beyond heaven. So you have to leave heaven. You have to leave the world of great physical, sensory enjoyment. Even if you want to see the artistic world, you have to leave the world of sensory enjoyment. And therefore, an artist cannot be a hedonist. You know what a hedonist is? Somebody who lives only in the world of pleasure, art for art's sake, painting for my own private purpose, my decoration, doing things which are pleasure or for sale. So, Natya Shastra right in the beginning lays down that it has to be in the common good. The purpose of calling it a Veda is simply that. And then Sarva Varanikam means that it has to come to some level. Yeah, there is a question. No, it does not contradict the fact. But what do you mean by contradict? There is heaven in which there are several things like the devatas are drinking wine. They take sura. So all these pleasures are there in heaven. And after a certain time, when your karma has been used, when there is no more credit in your account, then you come out of heaven. But the nature of that pleasure is distinct from artistic pleasure. That's the point. The pleasure of art that you get, and which you get only on this Martyalok, is not available to you in heaven. So, art is something more exclusive than heavenly pleasures. That is why later on one of the acharyas called it Brahmananda Sahodara. Not the same as the joy of the yogis, but something akin to the joy of the yogis, but very different, very unique. You see, again and again throughout the Natshas, they will emphasize that what you achieve out of art is absolutely exclusive, which you cannot get anywhere else. When we come to the 6th chapter and the 7th chapter, then we'll go into this as to why it is so. Why is this pleasure not available elsewhere? So, in terms of talking about levels of consciousness and nature of pleasure and nature of consciousness, all these distinctions are made. When we come to the idea of rasa, and we define the term rasa, then we'll see what are the different levels of rasa. There is also, fruit rasa. There is coffee rasa. All these little enjoyment which are very physical. And then there is rasa in art which is not available to you possibly anywhere in any other worldly activity. That is why we go for art. And it is not available even in heaven. That's why Indra asks for Natya. So all these things should not be taken as a mahatmya or a glorification of Natya. Don't fall into this trap that art is great. It's not just a glorification. Try to see the distinction. How it is distinct. How it is different. They don't say it's all one. Pleasure is pleasure. No, there are different kinds of pleasure. So the yogi, when he is in Brahmanand or she is in Brahmanand, that's a different pleasure. But for the rasa, it's a different pleasure in art. And for worldly enjoyment or a heavenly enjoyment, it is a different kind of pleasure. We are talking of different kinds of consciousness and different kinds of pleasures, which are so well laid out in this. Now, after this, the first chapter talks of a bit of history. They related Natya to Veda in terms of the essential value. That it is knowledge which is to be distributed. That it is expansive knowledge. Now they talk about how the art form in terms of practical techniques drew from the Vedic tradition. What do they mean by Vedic tradition? the ancient Vedic period, when the yajnas were performed, there were several things going on. There was somebody who was reciting the mantra. There was somebody who was singing the mantra. There was somebody who was reciting the mantra and also performing an anusthana or a movement or a ritual of not just pouring libations by going around the fire or getting up and sitting, and different things were going on. And there was also somebody who looked upon the total value of that thing. The preservation of the text, the Vedic text, was done through what is called the Rig Samhita. Rigved. Agnimide Purohitam, the first verse. The text was preserved through various ways, through various techniques, some sort of educational technologies. That was the Rig part. Part means recitation of a text. So that was done. Then that text was sung. The Rig part was only in 3 tones. Udat Anudat Swarit. Pavakana Saraswati Vajebir Vajni Ivati Yagyam Vashtu Dhiya Vasu Chodagitri Sunrita Anam Chetanti Sumatinam. This is just going up and down in 3 tones. Udatta, Anudatta and Swarit. Right?